Ambassador Vexthor stood before the Galactic Council, his three eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The holographic display showed the smoking remains of a human colony ship, its hull breached and lifeless. "The matter is settled," Vexthor announced, his mandibles clicking with pleasure. "The humans refused to vacate Sector 7 Alpha as demanded. We eliminated the trespassers as is our right under galactic law, Article 47, Subsection 12. The council chambers erupted in murmurs. The Krillian representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline vessel, pulsed nervously. "Ambassador, perhaps we should have investigated their claim of prior settlement more thoroughly?" Vexthor's laugh echoed through the chamber. "Prior settlement? They've only been spacefaring for 200 cycles. My people have claimed that sector for millennia. 300 colonists mean nothing in the grand scheme." What Vexthor didn't know was that among those 300 colonists were the families of Earth's deep space exploration crews. Wives, husbands, children, all gone in an instant because the Vextorian Empire considered humans too primitive to matter. When news reached Earth, Captain Michael Rodriguez was in the middle of a routine patrol near Jupiter Station. The message came through encrypted channels, and he watched in horror as the timestamp showed his wife's last transmission, cut off mid-sentence as the Vextorian warship opened fire. "Sir," his communications officer whispered, "Earth Command is issuing a general recall. All military vessels are to return immediately." Rodriguez stared at the screen, his knuckles white against the armrest. The galaxy had made a mistake, a catastrophic miscalculation born from ignorance. They didn't know about humanity's history. They hadn't studied Earth's blood-soaked past, the countless wars, the nuclear standoffs, the genocides and rebuildings. They saw a young species with limited territory and assumed weakness. The Galactic Council was about to learn why humanity had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times before reaching the stars. They were about to discover that the most dangerous predator isn't the one with the biggest claws, it's the one that refuses to stop fighting. The Vextorians had just declared war on a species that invented the concept of mutually assured destruction and considered it a valid military strategy. High Counselor Thrain of the Valerian Collective reviewed the human response with barely concealed amusement. The translation matrix struggled with the document's aggressive tone, but the message was clear: Earth demanded justice, reparations, and a formal apology. "They demand we apologize?" Thrain's crystalline feathers ruffled with indignation. "A species that barely controls 4-star systems dares make demands of an empire spanning 2,000 worlds?" The emergency council session had drawn representatives from across the galaxy. Most looked bored. The human problem seemed trivial. "Perhaps we should consider their request," offered Ambassador Linera of the peaceful Quellan Harmony. "The attack was unprovoked according to their territorial markers." "Territorial markers we don't recognize," Vexthor interjected smoothly. "The humans placed a metal plaque on an asteroid and called it theirs. By that logic, I could claim half the galaxy by throwing rocks with my name on them." Laughter rippled through the chamber. "I've studied their military capabilities," continued Vexthor, pulling up data streams. "Their largest warship carries what they call nuclear weapons, primitive fusion devices. We used similar technology 15,000 cycles ago before discovering zero-point energy. Their railguns are, charmingly antiquated. What the intelligence reports didn't show was the human capacity for innovation under pressure. They didn't show the weapons development facilities that had been placed under military control within hours of the attack. They didn't show the mathematicians and physicists being pulled from universities worldwide." On Earth, Admiral Catherine Wells stood in the Pentagon Situation Room, surrounded by holographic displays. "Gentlemen, ladies, we are outgunned, outranged, and outnumbered. The Vextorian Empire alone has a fleet that could glass Earth in an afternoon. So we surrender?" asked a general. "No," Wells smiled coldly. "We do what humans do best: we improvise, we adapt, and we make them regret ever hearing our name. Someone get me the Black Book projects." Everything we've theorized but never built because it was too dangerous or against convention. Those conventions just died with 300 of our people. The Galactic Council continued their session, confident in their superiority. They had no idea that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology, it was spite. The Vextorian patrol fleet cruised confidently through the disputed sector, 6 warships in loose formation. Commander Zalthar barely paid attention to the sensor readings. Humans were no threat. "Sir, we're detecting an anomaly," his sensor operator reported. "Multiple small objects approaching at high velocity." "Missiles?" Zalthar yawned. "Deploy countermeasures." "How tedious." The countermeasures activated, filling space with electromagnetic chaff and point defense laser grids. The approaching objects should have been destroyed instantly. They weren't missiles. They were human pilots in modified mining suits, each carrying a payload of experimental weapons. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, former asteroid miner turned volunteer kamikaze, grinned inside his helmet as he dove toward the Vextorian flagship. "Remember," he whispered to his squadron, "we're not here to win. We're here to send a message." The Vextorians realized too late that these weren't drones, they were manned. Who would sacrifice pilots like this? Their shields, designed to stop energy weapons and explosive projectiles, did nothing against the maglocked boarding pods that slammed into their hulls. Morrison's team breached the flagship's engine compartment. They didn't try to take the ship. Instead, they activated devices that Earth's scientists had assured them would work, theoretical weapons based on destabilizing zero-point energy fields. The flagship's engines didn't just explode, they imploded, creating a localized gravity well that crushed 2 nearby vessels before dissipating. Commander Zalthar's last thought, as his ship tore itself apart, was confusion. The humans had inferior technology. This wasn't supposed to be possible. What he didn't understand was that humans didn't need superior technology, they needed sufficient technology combined with absolute disregard for conventional warfare. News of the attack spread across the galaxy within hours. The Galactic Council emergency session was chaos. They used suicide tactics. Vexthor roared. "This violates every civilized convention." "Conventions they never agreed to," Counselor Thrain noted quietly, reviewing the footage. "Because we never invited them to join the council. We dismissed them as primitives. Irrelevant. We'll crush them." But doubt had entered the chamber. A species that would sacrifice pilots to destroy 3 ships, what else were they willing to do? What other rules would they break? Earth had just answered the Vextorian massacre with a message written in fire: "We don't follow your rules." The Vextorian war fleet assembled at the edge of human territory was the largest military force seen in the galaxy for 3 centuries. 500 warships, enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. Admiral Krixtal reviewed the attack plan with satisfaction. "We'll demonstrate overwhelming force. 1 strike on their Mars colony, military targets only. They'll surrender within a week." The fleet moved in, confident and unstoppable. They never reached Mars. Humanity had spent the last 3 weeks doing what it did best during wartime, innovating at a pace that defied logic. Every defense contractor, every university physics department, every military laboratory had been operating on zero sleep and maximum funding. The Vextorian fleet encountered the minefield first. But these weren't conventional mines, they were shattered asteroids, thousands of them, each piece tagged with a microthruster and basic targeting computer. The debris field, invisible to sensors until it activated, tore through the fleet formation. Then came the railgun platforms. Not mounted on ships, mounted on the moon itself. Electromagnetic accelerators 10 kilometers long, firing depleted uranium slugs at a fraction of light speed. No shields in the galaxy were designed to stop kinetic impactors moving that fast. The Vextorian flagship's shields collapsed under the impact of a telephone pole-sized projectile moving at 80,000 kilometers per second. The ship simply ceased to exist, along with the 3 vessels behind it. Fall back. Admiral Krickstow screamed, but humanity wasn't done. From concealed positions throughout the asteroid belt, human pilots launched in fighters that made their Vextorian counterparts look like luxury yachts. Stripped of everything except engines, weapons, and life support, these craft were flying coffins, and their pilots knew it. Commander Rachel Torres led her squadron in a weaving pattern through the retreating Vextorian fleet. Her fighter's computer screamed warnings about G-forces that should have killed her, but the chemical cocktail pumping through her veins kept her conscious. "This is Reaper Squadron," she transmitted back to Earth. "Beginning attack run. Tell my daughter I love her." The suicide tactics worked again, but this time they were diversions. While the Vextorians focused on the manned fighters, automated drones, controlled by AI systems that skirted the edge of sentience, deployed electromagnetic pulse weapons that fried every electronic system within range. 300 warships of the Vextorian fleet survived the engagement. Only 75 made it out of the solar system, running in disorder and terror. The galaxy watched the battle footage in stunned silence. The humans hadn't just won, they'd done it with a hodgepodge of improvised weapons and tactics no sane species would attempt. Counselor Thrain addressed the emergency council session. "We are dealing with a species that treats survival as negotiable in pursuit of victory. Does anyone else understand how terrifying that is?" The Vextorian Imperial Palace was in chaos. Emperor Vok then watched the casualty reports with mounting fury and, for the first time in his long reign, fear. 425 ships, he whispered. They destroyed 425 ships with modified mining equipment and improvised weapons. His military council stood silent. What could they say? The humans had introduced a concept the Vextorians had never encountered: total war. "Your Majesty," ventured General Thrax, "perhaps it's time to negotiate. The humans have proven more resilient than anticipated." Negotiate? The Emperor's roar echoed through the chamber. The Vextorian Empire does not negotiate with primitives. We will simply use greater force. Deploy the Planet Breaker fleet. On Earth, intelligence intercepted the transmission within hours. Admiral Wells called her staff together in the Situation Room, her face grave. "They're sending the Planet Breakers. 20 dreadnoughts, each capable of cracking a planet's crust. If they reach Earth, we lose." "Time to intercept?" asked Colonel Marcus Rivera. 16 days at their current speed. Then we have 16 days to finish Project Persephone. In a facility buried 3 kilometers beneath the Colorado Rockies, thousands of scientists worked on humanity's final gambit. If the conventional defense failed, if Earth itself was threatened, they had one last option, one that would change warfare forever. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes stood before the prototype, a device no larger than a coffin. "The quantum tunneling drive is ready. We can't bring weapons to their worlds, the distance is too great. But we can bring something worse." "What?" asked Wells, studying the device. "Us." The plan was insane: teleport strike teams directly onto Vextorian worlds. Not military targets. The quantum drive couldn't be precise enough for that. Instead, they would deploy the biological and chemical weapons that Dr. Mitchell had showcased. Target civilian populations. Force the Vextorians to pull their fleet back to defend their home worlds. It was a war crime by any definition. It violated every principle humanity claimed to hold dear. Wells looked at the weapon, thinking of the 300 colonists who started this war. Thinking of the pilots who'd sacrificed themselves. Thinking of Rachel Torres's daughter, who would grow up without a mother. "Humanity survived by knowing when to be monsters," she said quietly. "The Vextorians wanted to see our teeth. Let's show them our fangs. Prepare for deployment." The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest horror wasn't its weapons, it was its willingness to use them. The quantum strike came without warning. One moment, the Vextorian home world was secure. The next, 50 human teams materialized across the planet's major cities. They didn't deploy the biological weapons. They didn't need to. Instead, they broadcast a simple message: we are here. We bypassed every defense you have. We could have released extinction on your world, but we didn't. This time. The psychological impact was devastating. The Vextorian population panicked. If humans could appear anywhere, at any time, with weapons that could sterilize worlds, how could anyone be safe? Emperor Vok then stared at the human soldiers standing in his throne room, having materialized there like ghosts. The leader, Captain Rodriguez, placed a device on the floor between them. This contains enough biological agent to kill every Vextorian on this planet within a week, Rodriguez said calmly. It won't activate unless I fail to enter a code every hour. If your planet breakers destroy Earth, this device activates. As do the identical devices my teams planted on each of your 17 core worlds. You wouldn't, the Emperor stammered. Wouldn't I? Rodriguez's eyes were cold. You killed my wife. You dismissed 300 humans as insignificant. You escalated when we asked for peace. Every action you've taken has taught us that mercy is weakness in your eyes. He leaned forward. So understand this: if Earth dies, your entire empire dies with us. That's not a threat. It's a certainty. We've already proven we're willing to sacrifice everything. Are you? The Galactic Council emergency session convened within hours. For the first time, human representatives were invited to attend. Admiral Wells stood before the council, her uniform crisp despite 3 weeks without sleep. The war is over. The Vextorians will pay reparations for our colonists. They will formally recognize our territorial claims. And humanity will be granted a council seat. And if we refuse? Vexthor asked weakly. Then you'll discover whether our quantum drives can reach every council member's home world simultaneously. We'll find out together. The vote was unanimous. Counselor Thrain approached Wells after the session. You've terrified the galaxy today. You know that, correct? Every species is now calculating whether they can defend against quantum infiltration. Good, Wells replied. Let them be afraid. Fear breeds caution. Caution breeds respect. And respect might prevent this from happening again. You've changed the nature of galactic warfare forever. Wells looked at the alien counselor with tired eyes. No. We just introduced you to human warfare. To total war. To the concept that if you push us to the brink, we'll drag you over the edge with us. She turned to leave, then paused. Your galaxy operated on rules of civilized warfare: limited engagement, proportional response. You thought those were universal constants. But humans learned something you never did: sometimes survival requires becoming the monster. You declared war on us expecting a victim. Instead, you created a nightmare. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity, the species too stubborn to die and too creative to be contained, took its seat among the great powers. And every species in the galaxy now knew: never threaten a human's family. Because humans don't just get even, they make sure you regret ever being born. The war was over, but its legacy would echo for generations. The galaxy had gained its deadliest member, and everyone knew it. Welcome to the Council, humanity. The galaxy would never be the same.